The summer heat in downtown Detroit pressed down like a heavy blanket as Maya Johnson wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her grease-stained hand. At 24 years old, she had already earned a reputation as one of the most skilled mechanics in the city, despite facing countless obstacles that would have broken a weaker spirit. Her small auto repair shop, squeezed between a laundromat and a corner store, bore the simple name, Maya's Motors, in faded blue letters across a hand-painted sign. Maya had learned everything she knew about engines from her grandfather, Robert Johnson, a man who had worked on cars for over 50 years before arthritis forced him into retirement. He had taught her that engines were like people, they all had their own personalities, their own quirks, and their own ways of telling you what was wrong. More importantly, he had taught her that a good mechanic fixes more than just machines, they fix problems for people who depend on those machines to live their lives. The bell above her shop door chimed as an elderly white man shuffled inside, leaning heavily on a wooden cane. His clothes were clean but worn, the kind of careful maintenance that spoke of limited means but deep pride. His eyes, a pale blue behind wire-rimmed glasses, held the weight of someone who had seen too much and carried burdens that never got lighter with time. "Excuse me, miss," he said quietly, his voice carrying the careful politeness of someone who had learned not to expect much from the world. "I don't suppose you might have a moment to look at my truck. It's been making some terrible noises, and I'm afraid it might leave me stranded." Maya looked up from the engine she was working on, taking in the man's appearance. She had learned to read people as carefully as she read diagnostic codes. This man was proud but struggling, the kind of person who would rather walk than accept charity, but who had reached the point where walking might not be an option. "Of course, sir," she said, wiping her hands on a shop rag. "Let's take a look at what you're driving." Outside in the parking lot sat a 1998 Ford pickup truck that had seen better decades. The blue paint had faded to a dull gray in places, and rust bloomed along the wheel wells like orange flowers. But Maya could see that despite its age and wear, someone had been taking care of this truck. The windows were clean, the interior tidy, and the engine bay, when she popped the hood, showed signs of regular maintenance attempts with limited resources. The man introduced himself as Walter Morrison, and, as Maya began her examination of the truck, she learned pieces of his story. He was 73 years old, a Vietnam veteran who had served 2 tours before coming home to a country that didn't seem to want him. He had worked construction for 30 years until his back gave out, then spent another decade doing whatever odd jobs he could find. Now he lived on a small pension and Social Security, every dollar carefully counted and stretched. The truck was Walter's lifeline. He used it to get to his part-time job at a grocery store, where he bagged groceries and helped elderly customers carry their purchases to their cars. He also used it to visit his wife's grave every Sunday, a ritual he had maintained for the 8 years since she had passed away. Without the truck, Walter's world would shrink to the few blocks he could walk from his small apartment. As Maya listened to the engine and ran her diagnostic equipment, she quickly identified the problems. The transmission was slipping, the brake pads were dangerously thin, and the cooling system had a leak that would soon lead to catastrophic engine failure. The repairs would cost at least $1,500, probably closer to $2,000 with parts and labor. She watched Walter's face as she explained what needed to be done. His expression remained carefully neutral, but she saw his hands tighten on his cane and noticed the way he looked away when she mentioned the cost. He thanked her politely for her time and began to shuffle back toward the truck, clearly planning to drive it until it died completely. "Mr. Morrison," Maya called after him. "Would you mind if I took another look? Sometimes there are ways to approach these problems that cost less than the textbook solutions." Walter stopped and turned back, hope and skepticism warring in his expression. "I appreciate that, miss, but I know when I can't afford something. I don't want to waste any more of your time." "You're not wasting my time," Maya said firmly. "And, please, call me Maya. Why don't you come inside where it's cooler, and let me think about this a little more?" Inside the shop, Maya offered Walter a cold bottle of water and a folding chair while she pretended to research parts prices on her computer. In reality, she was thinking about her grandfather's words about fixing problems for people, not just machines. she looked at Walter, sitting quietly with his hands folded over his cane, and made a decision that would change both of their lives. "Mr. Morrison," she said finally, "I think I can help you. I have some used parts that would work for your truck, and, if you're not in a hurry, I could do the work during my slow periods. It would bring the cost down significantly." Walter's eyes brightened slightly. "How significantly?" Maya pretended to calculate. "Maybe $300 for everything." It was a lie, of course. The parts alone would cost her more than that, and the labor would take at least 2 full days. But she had learned from her grandfather that sometimes the most important repairs were the ones that fixed people's hope, not just their machines. Walter was quiet for a long moment, and Maya could see him wrestling with pride and necessity. Finally, he nodded slowly. That would be very helpful. When could you start?" "How about next week?" Maya suggested. "I'll order the parts and give you a call when they come in." After Walter left, promising to bring the truck back the following Monday, Maya sat in her quiet shop and wondered if she was making a mistake. Business had been slow, and she could barely afford to give away labor and parts. But something about Walter reminded her of her grandfather, the same quiet dignity, the same careful way of moving through a world that hadn't always been kind. That evening, Maya called her grandfather to tell him about Walter and her decision. Robert Johnson listened quietly as his granddaughter explained the situation, then chuckled softly. "You know, Maya girl, your grandmother always said that God puts people in our path for reasons we don't always understand right away. Maybe this old soldier needs more than just truck repairs." "What do you mean, Grandpa?" "I mean maybe he needs to remember that there are still good people in the world. And maybe you need to remember why you became a mechanic in the first place." Maya thought about her grandfather's words as she locked up the shop that night. She had become a mechanic because she loved the challenge of diagnosing problems and the satisfaction of making broken things work again. But, more than that, she had been drawn to the idea of helping people who depended on their vehicles to maintain their independence and dignity. Over the weekend, Maya used her connections in the automotive parts industry to source what she needed for Walter's truck. She called in favors, negotiated with suppliers, and even visited a few junkyards to find components that would work. By Sunday evening, she had everything she needed, and her total cost was already approaching $800, more than twice what she had quoted Walter. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, with the kind of persistent mist that made everything feel slightly damp. Walter arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, as promised, driving his ailing truck with the careful concentration of someone who knew it might not start again if he turned it off. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison," Maya called out as he climbed slowly out of the cab. "Ready to get this old girl fixed up?" Walter smiled, and Maya noticed it was the first genuine smile she had seen from him. "I have to admit, I didn't sleep much last night. I kept thinking this might be too good to be true." "Well, let's get started and prove that good things still happen," Maya replied, already walking around to pop the hood. As she began the complex process of transmission repair, Maya found herself enjoying Walter's quiet company. He didn't hover or offer unwanted advice like many customers did. Instead, he sat on a nearby stool and told stories about his experiences with vehicles over the years. He had learned to drive on his family's farm in rural Michigan, had maintained military vehicles during his time in Vietnam, and had owned the pickup truck for over 15 years. Bought her used from a dealer who said she'd been owned by a little old lady who only drove to church on Sundays, Walter said with a wry chuckle. Found out later she'd been owned by a construction company and had hauled gravel for 3 years. But she's been good to me even if she wasn't exactly what was advertised. As Maya worked, she learned more about Walter's life. His wife, Mary, had been a schoolteacher for 35 years before cancer took her. They had never had children, something they had both regretted but had learned to accept. Walter's family was mostly gone now, a few distant cousins he rarely saw, and a nephew in California who sent Christmas cards but never called. The work was complicated, requiring Maya to remove the transmission completely to access damaged components. It was the kind of job that most shops would rush through, but Maya took her time, explaining each step to Walter and showing him what was wrong and how she was fixing it. By Wednesday afternoon, Maya had the transmission back together and was working on the brake system. The cooling system repair would come last, requiring careful attention to ensure all the connections were tight and the system was properly bled of air bubbles. As she worked, other customers came and went, and Maya noticed how Walter interacted with them. He was unfailingly polite, offering his seat to an elderly woman who was waiting for her car, helping a young mother keep her toddler entertained, and sharing mechanical wisdom with a teenager who was asking questions about engine maintenance. "You know," one customer said to Maya quietly, "that gentleman has been incredibly helpful. Is he one of your employees?" Maya smiled as she watched Walter patiently explaining the importance of regular oil changes to the teenager. "No, he's a customer. But I think he might be one of the good ones." By Friday evening, the truck was ready. Maya had replaced the transmission components, installed new brake pads and rotors, repaired the cooling system leak, and even thrown in a much-needed tune-up. She had spent nearly 40 hours on the work and over $1,200 on parts, but as she turned the key and heard the engine purr smoothly, she felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with money. Walter arrived Saturday morning to pick up his truck, and Maya could see the anxiety in his posture as he approached the shop. She realized he was probably worried about additional costs or unexpected problems. "Good morning, Mr. Morrison," she called out cheerfully. "Your truck is ready to go." Walter's relief was visible as Maya led him to where the pickup sat in the parking lot. She had even washed it, and while the paint was still faded and the rust still showed, it looked cared for and proud. "The total comes to $300, just like we discussed," Maya said, handing him the keys. Walter nodded and reached for his wallet, pulling out 3 crisp $100 bills. Maya could see that the wallet was nearly empty after the payment, and she felt a moment of doubt about whether she should have accepted anything at all. As Walter counted out the money, he looked up at Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Miss Maya, I want you to know that this isn't just about the truck. You've given me something I thought I'd lost." "What's that, Mr. Morrison?" "Faith that there are still people who care about doing the right thing, even when nobody's watching." He paused, seeming to struggle with emotion. "I spent a lot of years after Vietnam thinking that the world had gone cold, that people only looked out for themselves. You've reminded me that's not always true." 3 weeks passed before Walter Morrison returned to Maya's Motors, but when he did, it wasn't because his truck was having problems. Maya looked up from rebuilding a carburetor to see him walking through her door, moving with noticeably more spring in his step than she remembered. His cane still supported him, but he wasn't leaning on it as heavily, and there was something different about his overall demeanor. "Mr. Morrison." Maya called out, genuinely pleased to see him. "How's the truck running?" "Like a dream," Walter replied, his face breaking into a broad smile. "I wanted to thank you again, and I brought you something." He held out a small paper bag that smelled unmistakably of fresh baked goods. "Mary used to make these chocolate chip cookies from her grandmother's recipe. I've been trying to recreate them for years, and I think I finally got close. I thought you might enjoy some." Maya accepted the bag gratefully, touched by the gesture. "That's very thoughtful of you. Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot." As they sat together in the small break area Maya had set up in the back of her shop, Walter shared what had been happening in his life since getting his truck repaired. The reliable transportation had opened up opportunities he hadn't expected. His supervisor at the grocery store had offered him additional hours, impressed by his consistent punctuality and reliability. More importantly, Walter had begun volunteering at a local veterans center, using his truck to transport elderly veterans to medical appointments and social activities. "I never realized how many veterans in this city don't have reliable transportation," Walter explained. "There's this whole network of guys my age and older who are essentially trapped in their apartments because they can't afford to maintain their vehicles or never learn to drive. I've been able to help a few of them get to their VA appointments." Maya listened with growing interest as Walter described the challenges facing many of Detroit's veteran population. Limited mobility meant limited access to healthcare, social services, and community connections. Many veterans were living in isolation, their worlds shrunk to whatever they could reach on foot or by infrequent public transportation. What about organizations that help with transportation? Maya asked. Walter shook his head. There are some, but they are overwhelmed. The VA has a van service, but it's booked weeks in advance and only covers medical appointments. There's nothing for the day-to-day stuff that keeps people connected to life, grocery shopping, visiting friends, going to church. As Walter spoke, an idea began forming in Maya's mind. She thought about all the vehicles that came through her shop in various states of disrepair, many of them owned by people who couldn't afford proper maintenance. She thought about her own skills and resources, and about the network of mechanics, parts suppliers, and automotive professionals she had built relationships with over the years. Mr. Morrison, she said slowly, what if there was a way to help more veterans get reliable transportation? Not just rides, but actually fixing their vehicles so they could maintain their independence. Walter's eyes lit up with interest. That would be incredible, but the cost? What if cost wasn't the primary concern? Maya interrupted. What if we could find ways to make repairs affordable or even free for veterans who really need help? Over the following hour, Maya and Walter discussed the possibilities. Walter's experience with the veterans community gave him insight into the scope of the need, while Maya's technical expertise and business connections provided potential solutions. By the time Walter left that afternoon, they had sketched out the basic framework for what would eventually become the Veterans Wheels program. Maya spent the next several days researching existing programs and reaching out to contacts in the automotive industry. She discovered that while there were various charitable organizations helping veterans, very few focused specifically on transportation issues. Most assistance programs were designed around providing rides rather than helping veterans maintain their own vehicles. The more Maya learned, the more convinced she became that vehicle ownership was crucial for veterans' independence and dignity. Having your own reliable transportation meant being able to respond to job opportunities, maintain social connections, access healthcare on your own schedule, and preserve the sense of self-reliance that many veterans valued highly. Maya's first step was to approach several automotive parts suppliers about donating or selling components at cost for qualifying repairs. To her surprise, many companies were receptive to the idea. The manager of a major parts distributor, himself a veteran, immediately offered to provide parts at wholesale cost and to donate a percentage of those savings to support the program. My dad was a World War II veteran, the manager explained during their meeting. After the war, he struggled to find steady work, and our family car was constantly breaking down. I remember how much stress that put on the whole family. If we can help prevent other veterans from going through the same thing, count us in. Word of Maya's idea began spreading through Detroit's veteran community faster than she had anticipated. Walter had mentioned the concept to friends at the Veterans Center, and they had shared it with others. Soon Maya was receiving phone calls from veterans asking if the program was already operational. One of these calls came from a woman named Sandra Williams, a Gulf War veteran who had been struggling to maintain her 2003 Honda Civic. Sandra worked 2 part-time jobs, one at a medical clinic and another cleaning office buildings at night. Her car had developed transmission problems that would cost more than the vehicle was worth to repair professionally. I know it's not worth fixing, Sandra told Maya over the phone, but it's all I have. Without it, I can't get to either of my jobs. I've been putting transmission fluid in it every few days and praying it holds together, but I know it's not going to last much longer. Maya asked Sandra to bring the car by for evaluation, even though the Veterans Wheels program didn't officially exist yet. When Sandra arrived the next day, Maya immediately understood the desperation in her voice. The Honda was clearly well maintained despite its age, but the transmission was indeed failing. Sandra had been caring for the car as well as her limited resources allowed, but some problems required professional intervention. As Maya examined the vehicle, Sandra shared her story. She had joined the military right out of high school, served 8 years including a deployment to Kuwait, and had been honorably discharged when budget cuts reduced her unit's size. The transition to civilian life had been challenging. Despite her military experience in logistics and vehicle maintenance, finding stable employment had proven difficult. People say they support veterans, Sandra explained, but when it comes to actual hiring, it seems like my military experience doesn't translate the way I thought it would. These part-time jobs don't pay much, but they are what I can get, and I need the car to keep them. Maya made a decision that would become the first official action of the Veterans Wheels program. She told Sandra to leave the car and return in 3 days. Maya then spent her own time and money to rebuild the Honda's transmission, using techniques she had learned from her grandfather to make older parts work like new. When Sandra returned to pick up her car, Maya handed her a bill for $50, enough to cover basic fluids and supplies, but nowhere near the actual cost of the work. "I can't accept this," Sandra protested, tears forming in her eyes. "This work is worth 10 times what you're charging." "The Veterans Wheels program covers the rest," Maya explained, using the name officially for the first time. "Our mission is to help veterans maintain their independence through reliable transportation." Sandra's gratitude was overwhelming, but, more importantly, her story began attracting attention from local media when she shared her experience on social media. A local newspaper reporter contacted Maya for an interview, and the resulting article brought the Veterans Wheels program to the attention of a much broader community. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Maya received dozens of calls from veterans needing help, automotive businesses offering support, and community members wanting to donate money or volunteer time. Within 2 weeks of the newspaper article, Maya realized she needed help organizing and managing the growing program. Walter Morrison stepped up to become the program's first official volunteer coordinator. His connections in the veteran community made him the ideal person to screen applicants and prioritize cases based on need. He also began reaching out to other veterans who might be willing to volunteer their time and skills. One of Walter's first recruits was Tommy Rodriguez, a Vietnam veteran who had worked as a mechanic in the Navy. Tommy had been unemployed for several months after being laid off from a factory job, and he was eager to use his skills in a meaningful way. He began volunteering at Maya's shop 2 days a week, helping with basic maintenance and repairs. "This feels like being useful again," Tommy told Maya after his first week of volunteering. "I've been feeling pretty worthless since I lost my job, but working on these cars reminds me that I still have skills people need." Another early volunteer was Maria Santos, an Army veteran who had served as a transportation specialist. Maria couldn't perform the physical work of vehicle repair due to a service-connected back injury, but she proved invaluable in organizing the program's paperwork, scheduling repairs, and coordinating with part suppliers. As autumn arrived in Detroit, the Veterans Wheels program had helped 37 veterans with vehicle repairs, developed a network of 12 regular volunteers, and established partnerships with 8 automotive businesses. Maya found herself working longer hours than ever before, but the work felt more meaningful than anything she had done previously. The program's success was measured not just in vehicles repaired. The letter arrived on a cold November morning when Detroit was wrapped in the gray promise of winter. Maya almost missed it among the usual stack of bills and automotive supply catalogs that filled her mailbox. The envelope was thick, formal, with a return address that made her pause: Morrison Family Foundation, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Maya assumed it was some kind of marketing material, perhaps related to Walter Morrison's last name being a coincidence. She set it aside while dealing with more immediate concerns: a transmission rebuild that was giving her trouble and 3 veterans scheduled to pick up their repaired vehicles that afternoon. It wasn't until the shop was quiet that evening that Maya finally opened the mysterious envelope. What she found inside left her speechless. The letter was written on expensive letterhead, the kind used by law firms and major corporations. But it was the handwritten note attached that caught her attention first. "Dear Miss Maya, I hope this letter finds you well. I have been thinking about our conversations and the incredible work you are doing with the Veterans Wheels program. There are some things about my family that I never mentioned, and I believe it's time you knew. The enclosed letter will explain everything. I hope you will consider what is being proposed. Your friend, Walter Morrison." With trembling hands, Maya unfolded the formal letter beneath Walter's note. It was addressed to her personally and signed by someone named James Morrison, identified as the director of the Morrison Family Foundation. Dear Miss Johnson, the letter began, I am writing to you regarding my uncle, Walter Morrison, and the extraordinary kindness you have shown him. Our family has been aware of Walter's situation for some time, though he has always been too proud to accept help from us directly. However, your Veterans Wheels program has given us an opportunity to honor both Walter's service and your remarkable vision for helping veterans in need. Maya had to read the next paragraph 3 times before she could believe what it was saying. The Morrison Family Foundation was established in 1952 by my grandfather, Robert Morrison, who built a successful automotive parts manufacturing company after returning from World War I. The foundation has assets of approximately $12 million, and our board has voted unanimously to provide significant funding for the Veterans Wheels program, should you be willing to accept our support. The letter went on to explain that Walter Morrison was not the struggling retiree Maya had believed him to be, but rather the youngest son of the Morrison family's automotive fortune. He had indeed served in Vietnam and had worked construction for many years, but by choice rather than necessity. Walter had deliberately separated himself from the family wealth, believing that he should make his own way in the world rather than rely on inherited money. Uncle Walter has lived modestly his entire adult life, the letter continued, donating most of his inheritance to various charities while keeping only enough to maintain a simple lifestyle. We have respected his choice, but we have also watched him from a distance, ensuring his safety and well-being without his knowledge. When we learned about your kindness to him and the program you have created, we realized this was the perfect opportunity to honor his values while supporting work that aligns with our foundation's mission. Maya set the letter down and stared at the wall of her shop, trying to process what she had just read. Walter Morrison, the humble veteran she had helped out of kindness, was related to one of Michigan's most prominent automotive families. The foundation was offering not just funding, but partnership in expanding the Veterans Wheels program across the entire state of Michigan. The specific proposal was breathtaking in its scope. The Morrison Family Foundation wanted to provide Maya with a new, fully equipped facility that could serve as headquarters for an expanded Veterans Wheels program. They were offering to hire full-time staff, purchase equipment, establish relationships with automotive manufacturers for parts donations, and create a network of satellite locations throughout Michigan. But the most surprising part of the proposal was the amount they wanted Maya to oversee as the program's executive director, $2.5 million in initial funding, with the promise of ongoing support based on program outcomes. Maya's hands shook as she finished reading the letter. The offer was more money than she had ever imagined having access to, and the opportunity to help veterans on a scale that could truly make a difference. But she also felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being proposed. The letter concluded with an invitation to meet with the Foundation's Board of Directors the following week to discuss the proposal in detail. A phone number was provided for Maya to call when she was ready to respond. Maya sat in her quiet shop for a long time that evening, trying to understand how her simple act of kindness toward an elderly veteran had led to this moment. She thought about her grandfather's words about fixing problems for people, not just machines, and wondered if this was what he had meant. The next morning, Maya called the number provided in the letter. A professional but warm voice answered, identifying herself as Jennifer Morrison, James Morrison's daughter and the Foundation's program coordinator. Miss Johnson, we've been hoping to hear from you, Jennifer said. I know this must all seem quite overwhelming. Would you be willing to meet with my father and Uncle Walter to discuss everything in person? I think some of your questions would be better answered face to face. Maya agreed to meet that Saturday at the Foundation's offices in Ann Arbor. She spent the rest of the week alternating between excitement and anxiety about the meeting. Part of her wondered if the entire situation was too good to be true, while another part of her began imagining the possibilities that such funding could create. Saturday morning found Maya driving her own well-maintained Honda Civic toward Ann Arbor, dressed in the only business suit she owned and feeling completely out of her element. The Morrison Family Foundation offices were located in a modern building near the University of Michigan campus, surrounded by other professional offices and medical facilities. Walter Morrison was waiting for her in the lobby when she arrived, and seeing his familiar face helped calm her nerves. He looked different in the foundation's elegant surroundings, still the same humble man she knew, but somehow more substantial, as if the professional environment revealed aspects of his personality that had been hidden. "Maya," Walter said warmly, standing to greet her. "Thank you for coming. I know this is all quite a surprise." "That's putting it mildly, Mr. Morrison," Maya replied with a nervous laugh. "I have about 1,000 questions." "I'm sure you do, and I promise we'll answer all of them. But first, let me introduce you to my nephew, James." James Morrison was a man in his early 50s, with the kind of confident bearing that came from years of business leadership. But his handshake was firm without being aggressive, and his smile seemed genuine as he welcomed Maya to the Foundation offices. "Miss Johnson, it's an honor to meet you," James said. "Uncle Walter has told us so much about your work. We're all impressed by what you've accomplished with such limited resources." As they walked through the Foundation's offices, Maya was struck by how different this world was from her small auto shop. The conference rooms were furnished with expensive furniture, the walls lined with awards and photographs documenting decades of charitable work. Yet despite the formal setting, the people she met seemed genuinely excited about the possibility of supporting the Veterans Wheels program. The meeting began with Walter explaining his family history and his decision to live independently from the family fortune. "I wanted to earn my place in the world," he said simply. "Military service taught me the value of self-reliance, and I never wanted to become the kind of person who coasted on inherited wealth." James took over the presentation from there, explaining the Morrison Family Foundation's history and mission. The foundation had been supporting automotive-related educational programs, veteran services, and community development projects for over 70 years. The Veterans Wheels program represented exactly the kind of innovative, community-based initiative they most wanted to support. "What impressed us most about your work," James explained, "is that you're not just fixing cars. You're rebuilding lives and creating community. The veterans you've helped are becoming advocates and volunteers themselves, multiplying the impact of your initial investment." Jennifer Morrison, who had joined the meeting after handling some phone calls, added her perspective as someone who had studied the Foundation's most successful programs. "The best charitable initiatives are the ones that empower people to help themselves and others. Your program does that better than anything we've seen." As the morning progressed, Maya learned about the Foundation's vision for expanding the Veterans Wheels program. They weren't proposing to take over her work, but rather to amplify it. Maya would remain in complete control of the program's direction and operations, but with resources that could extend her reach across the entire state. The proposed new facility would include 12 fully equipped service bays, a parts warehouse, a training center for veteran volunteers, and administrative offices. The foundation had already identified a location, a former auto dealership in Detroit that could be renovated to meet the program's needs. "We want to hire mechanics and support staff," James explained, "but we also want to create opportunities for veteran volunteers to develop their skills and potentially transition into paid positions. The program should be a pathway to employment as well as a source of vehicle repairs." Maya found herself getting excited despite her natural caution. The Foundation's vision aligned perfectly with ideas she had been developing but hadn't had the resources to implement. She had already been thinking about how to train veteran volunteers more systematically and how to create opportunities for them to use their developing skills in paid employment. But she also had concerns about maintaining the personal relationships and community atmosphere that had made the current program successful. "I don't want this to become just another bureaucratic organization," she said firmly. "The connection between the veterans, the personal relationships, the sense of family, that's what makes this work." Walter smiled at Maya's comment. "That's exactly why we want you to lead this expansion. You understand that fixing cars is just the beginning. The real work is fixing the connections between people and helping them remember their own value." As the meeting progressed, Maya realized that the Foundation's proposal offered her the opportunity to address veteran transportation needs on a scale she had never imagined possible. Instead of helping a few dozen veterans each year, she could potentially help thousands. Instead of operating from one small shop, she could create a network of locations that could serve veterans across Michigan. the financial details were as impressive as the overall vision. Maya's salary as executive director would be more than triple what she currently earned from her shop. The program would have dedicated funding for parts, equipment, facilities, and staff salaries. Most importantly, the foundation was committing to long-term support, not just a one-time grant. By the time lunch was served in the foundation's conference room, Maya was beginning to see herself as more than just a small business owner who helped a few veterans. She was being offered the opportunity to become a leader in veteran advocacy, using her mechanical skills as a foundation for much larger social impact. But, with opportunity came responsibility, and Maya felt the way Maya spent 3 sleepless nights wrestling with the Morrison Foundation's offer before making her decision. She called her grandfather first, needing his wisdom more than ever as she faced the most significant choice of her life. "Grandpa, I'm scared," she admitted as they sat in his small kitchen, the same place where he had taught her to read automotive manuals when she was 12 years old. "What if I take this money and somehow mess it up? What if I can't handle something this big?" Robert Johnson studied his granddaughter's face for a long moment before speaking. "Maya girl, do you remember what I told you when you were afraid to work on your first engine rebuild? You said the engine doesn't care how scared I am, it just needs someone who knows how to fix it properly." That's right. And these veterans don't care how scared you are either. They just need someone who understands their problems and knows how to fix them. You've already proven you can do that. He reached across the table and took her hands in his weathered ones. Sometimes being scared is just proof that you understand how important something is. Maya called Jennifer Morrison the next morning and accepted the foundation's offer. The transformation that followed exceeded everyone's expectations, including Maya's own. The Morrison Family Foundation moved with the efficiency of an organization that had been making strategic investments for decades. Within 6 weeks, they had purchased and begun renovating the former auto dealership that would become the Veterans Wheels Program headquarters. Maya found herself working 16-hour days, splitting her time between continuing operations at her original shop and planning the new facility. She was learning skills she had never imagined needing: how to hire and manage staff, how to develop training curricula, how to work with architects and contractors, and how to coordinate with government agencies and veteran service organizations. The foundation had assigned Jennifer Morrison to work directly with Maya as the program expanded. Jennifer proved to be an invaluable partner, handling the administrative and financial complexities while Maya focused on the program's operational and community-building aspects. "You know," Jennifer said one afternoon as they reviewed construction progress at the new facility, "I've worked on a lot of charitable programs over the years, but I've never seen anything generate this kind of community response." She was referring to the unprecedented level of volunteer interest and corporate support that had emerged as word of the expansion spread. Maya was receiving calls from veterans across the state wanting to volunteer, from automotive companies offering to donate equipment and parts, and from community organizations wanting to partner with the program. One of the most significant developments was the emergence of satellite locations. Veterans in Grand Rapids, Lansing, Kalamazoo, and Flint had contacted Maya asking if the program could be expanded to their communities. Rather than trying to manage distant locations directly, Maya had developed a franchise-like model where local veteran groups could establish their own Veterans Wheels chapters with support and resources from the main program. The first satellite location opened in Grand Rapids just 3 months after Maya accepted the foundation's offer. It was operated by Maria Rodriguez, a Marine veteran and former automotive technician who had been unemployed for over a year before learning about the Veterans Wheels program. With training and startup funding from Maya's organization, Maria was able to establish a program that served veterans in western Michigan. "Maya saved my life twice," Maria explained to a local television reporter who was covering the Grand Rapids opening. "First, she fixed my car when I couldn't afford to pay a regular mechanic. Then, she gave me the opportunity to build something meaningful that helps other veterans. This program doesn't just fix vehicles, it fixes hope." The Detroit headquarters officially opened on a snowy February morning with a ceremony attended by over 200 people. Local politicians, veteran advocates, automotive industry leaders, and dozens of veterans who had been helped by the program gathered to celebrate what Maya had built. Walter Morrison cut the ribbon, using the same hands that had once struggled to count out $300 for truck repairs. As the crowd cheered and cameras flashed, Maya thought about the improbable journey that had brought them all to this moment. The new facility was impressive by any measure. The 12 service bays were equipped with state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment and tools. The parts warehouse contained inventory worth over $400,000, much of it donated by manufacturer partners. The training center included classroom space for 40 students and hands-on learning stations where veteran volunteers could develop their automotive skills. But Maya's favorite space was the community room, designed specifically for the Tuesday evening, wrench therapy sessions that had become central to the program's culture. The room was decorated with photographs documenting the program's history, from the first picture of Walter's repaired truck to recent images of veterans who had found employment through program training. By the end of its first year of expanded operations, the Veterans Wheels program had helped over 800 veterans with vehicle repairs, trained 65 veteran volunteers in automotive skills, and placed 32 veterans in full-time employment with automotive companies. The satellite programs in 4 additional cities had helped hundreds more veterans while creating local economic opportunities. The program's success attracted national attention. Maya received invitations to speak at conferences, requests for interviews from automotive magazines, and inquiries from veteran organizations in other states wanting to replicate the program. The Morrison Family Foundation began receiving calls from philanthropists in other regions wanting to fund similar initiatives. But, for Maya, the most meaningful recognition came from the veterans themselves. The walls of her office were covered with thank you letters, photographs of repaired vehicles, and updates from veterans whose lives had been changed by the program. Each letter reminded her why she had started this work and motivated her to continue expanding its reach. One letter, from a veteran named David Park, particularly touched her. "Dear Maya, I wanted you to know that fixing my transmission did more than get me back on the road. For 3 years after I got out of the army, I felt like I was invisible, like society didn't have any use for me. When you spent time explaining what was wrong with my car and how you were fixing it, you treated me like someone whose opinion mattered. That meant everything to me. I'm writing this from my new job at Ford Motor Company, where I'm working as a quality control technician. The automotive knowledge I learned as a volunteer in your program helped me get this job. Thank you for seeing value in me when I couldn't see it in myself." As the program's second year began, Maya faced new challenges and opportunities. The success in Michigan had attracted interest from the federal government, and she had been invited to testify before a congressional subcommittee about veteran transportation issues. Several major automotive companies wanted to partner with the program on national initiatives. But Maya also remained committed to the personal relationships and community atmosphere that had made the program successful from the beginning. Every Tuesday evening, she still participated in wrench therapy sessions, working alongside veterans on various repair projects while maintaining the informal mentoring relationships that were central to the program's culture. Tommy Rodriguez, one of the program's first volunteers, had become Maya's assistant director and her most trusted advisor on veteran-related issues. His perspective helped Maya remember that behind every success story was a human being who had needed not just vehicle repairs, but respect, community, and purpose. "You know what makes this program different from other veteran services?" Tommy said one evening as they locked up the headquarters facility. "Most programs are designed by people who want to help veterans. This program was designed by someone who genuinely likes veterans and wants to be around them. That makes all the difference." Maya's personal life had also been transformed by the program's success. The foundation had provided her with a comfortable salary and benefits, allowing her to buy her first house and help her grandfather with his medical expenses. But, more importantly, the work had given her a sense of purpose that went far beyond financial security. She had also developed a romantic relationship with Dr. Michael Chen, a VA psychologist who had become involved with the program after several of his patients had been helped by Veterans Wheels services. Michael shared Maya's commitment to veteran welfare and understood the demands of her work in ways that previous relationships had lacked. 5 years after that first meeting with Walter Morrison, Maya Johnson stood before a packed auditorium at the Detroit Economic Club, preparing to deliver a keynote address about social entrepreneurship and Veteran Services. The woman who had once been nervous about explaining repair costs to customers was now comfortable addressing audiences of hundreds, sharing the lessons she had learned about building programs that changed lives. The Veterans Wheels program had become a national model, with active chapters in 12 states and inquiries from veteran organizations across the country. The program had helped over 15,000 veterans with vehicle repairs, trained more than 800 veterans in automotive skills, and placed over 400 veterans in permanent employment with automotive companies and related businesses. But numbers, Maya had learned, only told part of the story. The real impact was measured in the individual transformations that happened when veterans rediscovered their value and purpose through meaningful work and genuine community. That morning, before the speech, Maya had visited the original Veterans Wheels headquarters to participate in a special ceremony. Walter Morrison, now 78 years old, was retiring from his role as volunteer coordinator, a position he had held with distinction for 5 years. His replacement was Sandra Williams, the Gulf War veteran whose Honda Civic had been one of Maya's first repair projects. Sandra had completed the program's automotive technician training, worked for 2 years at a Ford dealership, and recently earned her certification as a master mechanic. Her appointment as volunteer coordinator represented the kind of career progression that the program had always aimed to facilitate, helping veterans not just solve immediate problems, but build long-term stability and leadership capacity. When Maya first fixed my car, Sandra said during the ceremony, "I thought I was just getting help with transportation. I had no idea I was joining a family that would change my entire life. Now I get to help other veterans discover what I discovered, that our military experience and our mechanical aptitude can be powerful tools for building the lives we want." The ceremony also celebrated the program's newest initiative, the Veterans Wheels Institute, a formal partnership with Wayne State University that offered veterans the opportunity to earn associate degrees in automotive technology while working as paid interns in the program's various locations. The first class of 24 veterans would begin their studies in the fall, with tuition fully covered by the Morrison Family Foundation. Dr. Michael Chen, who had married Maya 2 years earlier and had become the program's director of veteran services, had been instrumental in developing the institute's curriculum. His background in psychology had helped design coursework that addressed not just technical skills, but also the emotional and social challenges that many veterans faced in transitioning to civilian careers. Military service teaches people to solve complex problems under pressure and to work effectively as part of a team, Michael explained to the university partners. Those are exactly the skills needed in automotive technology. We just need to help veterans see how their military experience translates to civilian success. As Maya prepared for her speech that evening, she reflected on how much her understanding of success had evolved. When she had first started the program, she had measured success primarily in terms of vehicles repaired and veterans helped. Now she understood that the most important outcomes were often the hardest to quantify: the restoration of dignity, the rebuilding of confidence, and the creation of communities where veterans could support each other. The program had also taught Maya important lessons about leadership and organizational development. Managing rapid growth while maintaining core values had required constant attention to culture and mission. Maya had learned to delegate operational responsibilities while remaining personally involved in the community-building activities that kept the program connected to its roots. Jennifer Morrison, who had become Maya's closest professional partner and dear friend, often joked that Maya had become the automotive industry's most unlikely celebrity. Articles about the Veterans Wheels program had appeared in major business magazines, and Maya had been invited to speak at conferences ranging from automotive technology summits to social entrepreneurship workshops. But fame had never been Maya's goal, and she remained most comfortable in her work clothes, hands dirty from actual repair work, teaching veteran volunteers how to rebuild transmissions or diagnose electrical problems. Every week, she still spent at least one full day working directly on vehicles, partly to maintain her technical skills but mostly to stay connected to the work that had inspired the program originally. One of Maya's proudest achievements was the development of the Mentor Mechanic program, which paired experienced automotive professionals with veteran volunteers who were developing their skills. The program had attracted participation from some of the automotive industry's most respected figures, including several NASCAR team mechanics and engineers from major manufacturers. the mentor relationships often extended far beyond technical training. Many mentors became advocates for their veteran partners, helping them navigate job interviews, negotiate salaries, and adapt to workplace cultures. Some mentors had even started their own hiring initiatives specifically focused on veteran recruitment. Maya created something that benefits everyone involved, explained Robert Torres, a Ford Motor Company engineer who had mentored 6 veterans through the program. The veterans get world-class training and career guidance, and we get access to some of the most dedicated and capable workers in the labor force. It's a win-win that makes the entire automotive industry stronger. The program's success had also attracted attention from researchers studying social entrepreneurship and veteran services. A team from Harvard Business School had spent 6 months documenting the Veterans Wheels model, and their case study was now used in business schools across the country to teach students about sustainable social innovation. Professor Elizabeth Warren from the university's Public Policy School had written that the Veterans Wheels program represented a new model for addressing social problems through market-based solutions that create value for all stakeholders while maintaining focus on the human dignity of the people being served. But academic recognition, while gratifying, was less important to Maya than the ongoing feedback she received from veterans whose lives had been touched by the program. Her office remained decorated with thank you letters, graduation photos, and wedding invitations from veterans who wanted to share their major life milestones with the community that had supported their success. One recent letter, from a veteran named James Washington who had completed the automotive technician training and was now working as a service manager at a dealership in Columbus, Ohio, captured the essence of what the program meant to its participants. Dear Maya and the Veterans Wheels family, I'm writing to let you know that I've been promoted to service manager and my wife and I just bought our first house. 5 years ago, I was sleeping in my car because I couldn't afford rent and couldn't find steady work. The program didn't just teach me automotive skills, it taught me that I still had value and that other people believed in me. Now I get to pass that gift forward by hiring other veterans and showing them the same respect and opportunity that you showed me. Thank you for seeing potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. Stories like James's reminded Maya why the personal relationships remain central to the program's mission, even as it had grown to serve thousands of veterans across multiple states. Each veteran who came through the program was treated as an individual with unique needs, experiences, and potential contributions. The Tuesday evening community sessions continued at all program locations, maintaining the informal mentoring and mutual support that had characterized Maya's original shop. Veterans from different eras and branches of service worked together on repair projects while sharing stories, advice, and friendship. These sessions had evolved into something approaching group therapy, though no one used that term. Veterans dealing with deployment-related stress, disability challenges, or civilian transition difficulties found support and understanding from peers who had faced similar struggles. There's something about working with your hands while talking through problems, observed Dr. Chen during one of his regular research visits to document the program's psychological benefits. The mechanical work gives people something constructive to focus on while they process difficult emotions. And the group setting provides social support without the formal structure that some veterans find intimidating. As Maya took the stage that evening for her economic club address, she looked out at an audience that included automotive executives, government officials, veteran advocates, and many of the veterans who had become central to the program's success. Walter Morrison sat in the front row, still attending program events despite his official retirement, his presence a reminder of how far they had all traveled together. Maya's speech focused on the lessons she had learned about social entrepreneurship and the importance of designing programs around dignity rather than dependency. She talked about the difference between helping people and empowering them, and about how the most sustainable social innovations are those that create value for everyone involved. When I first met Mr. Walter Morrison 5 years ago, Maya told the audience, I thought I was just fixing an old truck for a veteran who needed help. What I learned is that he didn't need charity, he needed opportunity. He needed to be valued for his skills and experience. He needed to be part of a community where he could contribute as well as receive support. She continued, the Veterans Wheels program works because it's based on reciprocity and respect. We don't just fix veterans' cars, we create opportunities for veterans to fix each other's cars, to teach automotive skills to other veterans, and to build businesses and careers that strengthen their communities. Everyone involved gets to be both helper and helped, teacher and student, leader and team member. Maya concluded her speech by sharing her vision for the program's future. The Morrison Family Foundation had committed to supporting expansion into 20 additional states over the next 5 years. New partnerships with major automotive manufacturers would create more opportunities for veteran employment and career advancement. The Veterans Wheels Institute would expand to offer bachelor's degree programs in automotive engineering and business management. But, most importantly, Maya emphasized, the program would continue to be guided by the values that had made it successful from the beginning, treating veterans as valuable community members rather than charity cases, maintaining the personal relationships that build trust and mutual support, and remembering that fixing problems for people is always more important than just fixing their machines. As the audience rose in sustained applause, Maya saw Walter Morrison wiping tears from his eyes. After the event, as Maya was accepting congratulations and answering questions from attendees, Walter approached her. "Maya," he said quietly, "Mary would have loved to see what you've built. She always believed that kindness creates ripples that spread further than we can imagine. I think she'd be amazed by how far the ripples from your kindness have traveled." Maya hugged the man who had unknowingly changed her life by simply walking into her shop 5 years earlier. "Mr. Morrison, I think those ripples are just getting started. We've got a lot more work to do." As Maya drove home that night, she passed the original Veterans Wheels headquarters, now one of 12 locations serving veterans across Michigan. The building was dark except for the security lights that illuminated the program's mission statement painted across the front wall, serving those who served, one vehicle, one veteran, one community at a time. Maya thought about her grandfather, who had passed away the previous year but had lived to see the program's national recognition. In his final months, he had often talked about how proud he was that his granddaughter had learned his most important lesson, that the best mechanics fix problems for people, not just machines. The Veterans Wheels program had grown beyond anything Maya had imagined possible when she first decided to help Walter Morrison with his truck repairs. But, at its heart, it remained exactly what it had always been, a community of people committed to treating veterans with the dignity and respect they had earned through their service, and providing them with opportunities to continue serving their communities in meaningful ways. Maya knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to expand the program's reach and impact. There would be more veterans to help, more communities to serve, and more innovations to develop in the ongoing work of building a society that truly honors the service and sacrifice of its military veterans. But, tonight, Maya was simply grateful for the unexpected journey that had begun with a simple act of kindness and had evolved into a life's work that was more fulfilling than anything she had ever imagined possible. Walter Morrison's truck had indeed been repaired 5 years earlier, but the letter that had followed had repaired something much more important, Maya's understanding of what her life could become when guided by purpose, community, and the simple belief that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. "Maya has figured out something that took me years of graduate school to understand," Michael told Jennifer Morrison during a program evaluation meeting. "Veterans don't just need services, they need to be needed. This program gives them opportunities to contribute their skills and experience to help other veterans. That's incredibly healing." As Maya reflected on the 2 years since Walter Morrison had first walked into her shop, she was amazed by how much had changed. The small auto repair business she had inherited from her grandfather had evolved into a statewide program that was improving thousands of lives while creating new models for veteran services and community development. But perhaps the most significant change was in Maya herself. The shy young woman who had once been nervous about charging fair prices for her work had become a confident leader who could speak to corporate executives, government officials, and veteran advocates with equal effectiveness. She had learned to see herself not just as a mechanic, but as a social entrepreneur whose technical skills were tools for creating broader social impact. The program continued to grow, but Maya had learned to manage that growth carefully, ensuring that expansion didn't compromise the personal relationships and community atmosphere that remained central to the Veterans Wheels mission. Each new location was required to implement the Tuesday evening community sessions and to maintain the program's commitment to treating veterans as valued partners rather than charity recipients. As Maya prepared for another day of managing what had become one of the most successful veteran service programs in the country, she thought about her grandfather's words about fixing problems for people, not just machines. She had certainly fixed Walter Morrison's truck 2 years earlier, but in doing so, she had discovered her own capacity to fix much larger problems in ways she had never imagined possible. The letter that had changed everything was now framed on her office wall, a reminder of how unexpected opportunities can emerge from simple acts of kindness. But Maya knew that the real measure of success wasn't in the awards, recognition, or even the millions of dollars in funding the program had received. It was in the relationships built, the dignity restored, and the hope renewed in the lives of veterans who had rediscovered their value through community, purpose, and the simple respect of having their problems taken seriously by someone who cared enough to fix them properly. "I need some time to think about this," Maya said as the meeting concluded. "This is much bigger than anything I've ever done before." "Of course," James replied. "Take all the time you need. But I hope you'll seriously consider this opportunity. Uncle Walter was right about you. You have the vision and character to make this succeed on a much larger scale." As Maya prepared to leave, Walter walked her to the parking garage. "Maya," he said quietly, "I want you to know that everything about this offer is genuine. My family has always believed in supporting people who are making a real difference, and you're doing that. But more than that, you've reminded an old veteran that there's still kindness and generosity in the world." Driving back to Detroit that evening, Maya's mind raced with possibilities and concerns. She thought about her grandfather's advice about fixing problems for people, and wondered if accepting the foundation's offer would allow her to fix problems for exponentially more people. She also thought about the comfortable simplicity of her current life and wondered if she was ready for the complexities that would come with managing a multi-million-dollar program. But most of all, she thought about the veterans she had already helped and the many more who needed assistance. If the Morrison Family Foundation could help her reach those veterans, then perhaps the decision was already made. But lives changed. Sandra Williams had been promoted to a full-time position at the medical clinic after her reliable transportation allowed her to take on additional responsibilities. Walter Morrison had become a recognized advocate for veteran issues in the community. Tommy Rodriguez had used his volunteer work as a stepping stone to landing a new job at a larger automotive shop. But Maya's most profound satisfaction came from the relationships she had built with the veterans who had become part of the program's extended family. Every Tuesday evening, a group of veterans gathered at Maya's shop for what they called wrench therapy, working together on various repair projects while sharing stories, advice, and mutual support. These Tuesday evening sessions revealed the deeper impact of the Veterans Wheels program. Many of the veterans had been isolated before joining the program, struggling with the transition to civilian life and the challenges of aging with service-connected disabilities. The program had given them not just reliable transportation, but a sense of purpose and community. "You know what Maya has really given us?" Walter said one Tuesday evening as the group was cleaning up after working on a particularly challenging engine rebuild. "She's given us a mission again. For the first time since we left the service, we have something important to do that uses our skills and helps our brothers and sisters." As Maya locked up her shop that night, she reflected on how much her life had changed since the day Walter Morrison first walked through her door. What had started as a simple act of kindness had evolved into something much larger, a program that was transforming not just vehicles, but lives and communities. But Maya had no idea that the biggest changes were still ahead, and that a letter arriving in the mail would soon take the Veterans Wheels program to a level she had never imagined possible. Maya felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. "Mr. Morrison, you remind me why I love what I do. Thank you for trusting me with your truck." Walter started the engine, and both of them smiled at the smooth, quiet sound it made. As he prepared to drive away, he rolled down the window. "Miss Maya, would it be all right if I stopped by sometime? Not for truck problems, I hope, but just to say hello." "I'd like that very much, Mr. Morrison. Drive safely." As Maya watched Walter drive away in his repaired truck, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer sun. She had no idea that this simple act of kindness would soon lead to changes that would transform not just her life, but the lives of countless others in her community.